We have the will to turn this country round.
Veteran right-wing politician Ann Widdecombe addressing the Reform UK conference last year. Late this afternoon, police confirmed that the 78-year-old's sudden and unexpected death may have been murder, and they'd taken a man into custody.
We can confirm that a 26-year-old man was arrested at an address in Newton Abbot this afternoon on suspicion of the murder of Ann Widdecombe. The suspect, who is a white British national, remains in police custody whilst inquiries continue.
Ann Widdecombe had been found dead at her home in Haytor, Dartmoor, yesterday morning with serious injuries. Police refused to rule out a political motive for her suspected murder, but confirmed it wasn't being treated as terrorism. They didn't offer any more details on who the alleged attacker was or whether he was known to them or her already.
Any signs that anything was stolen from the property? Was the property broken into? Were you seeing it as a burglary gone wrong?
So, all the things that we need to work on throughout the investigation, and the key thing I think for us is obviously all our efforts today are focused on this investigation to get the right outcome for Ms Widdecombe's family, friends, but also to make our communities feel safe and confident that we have some of the best officers working on it. We remain open-minded as to that question. Nothing further to say at this time.
After the murders of Labour MP Joe Cox a decade ago and Tory MP David Amess in 2021, this has sent shockwaves through public life.
Well, this is really shocking news. And my thoughts, I think all of our thoughts, will be with the family and friends of Ann Widdecombe.
Is the government planning to increase the security of serving or retired politicians in light of this murder?
The security of politicians is of the utmost importance, and we have enhanced it in recent years. It's really important we remain vigilant. I'm not going to speculate about this particular case.
I'm just heartbroken thinking about her family. It's one thing when an elderly person dies, but to know that this is that they were killed, I can't imagine what they must be going through.
Ann Widdecombe was a firebrand Tory MP for 23 years, from 1987 to 2010, and a tough-talking prisons minister under John Major, who defended the shackling of pregnant women.
We've certainly had a woman abscond when she was fairly well into her pregnancy, and she went for an antenatal appointment and she jumped out of a first-floor window.
Known as a social conservative, she defected to the Brexit Party in 2019 and then became Reform's hardline justice and immigration spokesperson.
And we will turn the boats round and send them back.
Commenting just the day before she was killed this week on the sleaze allegations against Nigel Farage and his shock resignation.
He has taken this decision because he wants an end one way or the other. And he's right to do this.
She was briefly an MEP, respected and often feared by both her rivals and allies.
She is the best-known female politician since Margaret Thatcher.
Ann Widdecombe regularly courted controversy and faced accusations of using insensitive and racist language. But she stayed in the public eye and gained a new generation of fans with her self-effacing forays into reality television, an ability to not take herself too seriously. Anton Dubek paying tribute to his friend before the news broke that she may have been murdered.
My thoughts go out to all of her nearest and dearest and all her family. This is a sad day, and I'm devastated by the news of Anne's passing, but I shall remember her fondly and miss her.
Police have appealed for anyone with information that might help them understand why Ann Widdecombe was apparently killed with such brutal violence to come forward.
Kemi and Zoran reporting. Well, our senior political correspondent Paul McNamara is in Westminster. Paul.
Yeah, a profound shock has descended on Westminster. Ann Widdecombe was a conviction politician, sometimes divisive and never afraid to let you know exactly what she thought, even towards those supposedly on the same team. Famously, in the 1990s, she fell out with Michael Howard. Come the 1997 Tory leadership race, she unleashed the withering phrase about him that he had, quote, something of the night about him. And yet, across the political divide, perhaps in part because of that, she was well respected. Tributes have poured in today. They have transcended party politics. This was a former Tory, a Brexit Party member of the European Parliament and then member of the Reform Party. Her politics, especially in Europe, could not be further from the Liberal Democrats. But this from Ed Davey today, their leader, tweeting, "She was a woman of deep faith who devoted her life to public service." There is no doubt there are many who disagreed with her politics, many that she fell out with. But Ann Widdecombe cared little for what people thought of her, and because of that, people respected her a great deal.
Thanks, Paul. Well, joining me now is the broadcaster and author Ian Dale, who's a long-time close personal friend of Ann Widdecombe. Thanks very much for coming in. Tell me first how you'd heard the news she had died.
I had a text from one of my LBC producers, former producer Laura, who just said, "Really sorry to hear about Anne." And I'm thinking, what? Which Anne? And then eventually, a couple of minutes later, realised what had happened. And I mean, Anne was 78, which 20 years ago, we'd have thought that was quite a good age to reach. But my first thought was, well, she was just so full of life. She was still going around all the media studios, appearing on television, enjoying life. And I think that was my first thought, sort of, I expected her to live into her 90s. And then we heard the shocking news this afternoon. I mean, and I'm genuinely reeling from that because you just can't compute it.
I mean, it was utterly stunning.
Yeah, it
was hard to
and until we know
understand
what the circumstances were, I suppose it's too difficult. It's difficult to draw too many conclusions. It seems as if it didn't have a political motivation, but I mean, my first thought was, well, if you are a political assassin and you want to kill a politician, well, somebody who lives on their own in the middle of Dartmoor, you're a pretty easy target. But
I mean, the police have been quite clear.
Yeah, hopefully that wasn't the case.
Nevertheless, utterly devastating for family and friends like you. And you have known her for a very long time.
I've known her since 1997, so getting on for 30 years. And we've, shall we say, had our disagreements over the years. Yeah, exactly. And the thing about Anne was she was a conviction politician, and there are far too few of those around at the moment. And that's why on social media today, yes, there have been some horrible comments, but predominantly people have said, well, I may not have agreed with her on many things, but I like a politician who says what they mean and mean what they say. And she did. And she was a bit more pragmatic than she sometimes cared to admit. For example, she was never a Brexiteer. We used to do a theatre show together called A Night with Ann Widdecombe. And I remember asking her in many of these shows, well, sort of, would you want to come out of the EU? She said, absolutely not. Because she said, I keep asking people who want to leave, well, what would happen afterwards? And they've never got an answer. She was a big Ken Clarke supporter. So she was never a sort of ideological Brexiteer.
I mean, she did offend people, didn't she? And she did divide people. That is often the nature of conviction politicians. Did it bother her? Not at all. Not at all. In fact, she relished it. And, I mean, she never had any regard for her own safety either. And if the Prime Minister had rung her up and said, Anne, we think you ought to have some security, she would have just said stuff and nonsense. And particularly, I mean, she hasn't been an MP for 16 years. And I remember when she announced she was standing down, I said, you really don't want to do this, because if you don't have the letters M and P after your name, all the television people, they won't want you on anymore. Boy, was I wrong. She did all of the different reality things, but she always said she never would. I mean, her politics was very guided by her faith. She was an opponent of abortion. She opposed equal marriage. I mean, as a gay man, how did you reconcile that with her? What were the disputes like? And did you win any? I won one, I think. I mean, all I could do was try and sort of soften her a little bit on these issues. I knew I was never going to convince her totally, because she was guided by her religion. I'm not religious, but I respect her religion. And she voted against all sorts of different equal legislation. And I remember going to one of these theatre evenings once, having a real up and downer with her about gay adoption in the car on the way. And she was absolutely against it on the basis that it should be, children should be brought up by a man than a woman. And I said to her, but if that's not possible, is it not better for children to be in a secure, loving home, even if the people are gay? She said, no, because you can't have a secure home in a gay relationship, because on average they last 2 years. That's what, in my experience, it's more like 20 minutes. And you could see the cogs in her brain whirring. And once she realised what I was implying, she roared with laughter, and she could laugh at herself. But in 2019, I interviewed her, and
I said to her, would you seek to reverse equal marriage? She said, absolutely not. You can't take away things that people have. It would be a preposterous and evil thing to do.
I mean, you talk about laughing at herself. She reached a new audience with Strictly. I mean, were you surprised by that? And she clearly loved it, didn't she?
When she was an MP, she refused to do any of these programmes. But afterwards, she felt she was liberated. And I was quite surprised. I was more surprised she went on Big Brother because she was adamant she would never do that. But she reached a new audience and people loved her for it. She's told me she would never write her memoirs because she didn't want a friendless old age. Yet, after Strictly, she published a book called Strictly Ann.
I mean, you described her today as one of a handful of your true friends. How will you choose to remember her?
In politics, you don't make friends easily. You have lots of friends. But I regard a friend as somebody who you can phone up in a time of trouble and say, can you help me? She was one of those.
Ian Dale, thanks very much for coming in. Thank you. And going back to tonight's main news, a 26-year-old white British man has been arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of the former Conservative minister Ann Widdecombe. The 78-year-old was found with serious injuries at her home on Dartmoor. Police said it was not being treated as terrorism and there was nothing to suggest it had been politically motivated. Well, for the latest on the fast-moving police investigation, Kemi Nzeram is in Westminster. Kemi.
Yeah, Jackie, the death of Ann Widdecombe has reverberated round Westminster. While we've been on air, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, released a short video and he talked about the state of British politics and, in his view, some thoughts on the safety of our politicians.
Rest in peace, Anne. A remarkable, principled woman and a truly dreadful way to die and a terrible reflection on modern Britain. And I do fear that for anybody in public life, or especially the political space, things have become even more dangerous today.
So to recap what's been an extraordinarily fast-moving day, police confirmed this morning that Ann Widdecombe had been found dead with serious injuries, but no sooner had they done that, speculation began to mount that there was something more serious going on. And in fact, this afternoon, they held a short press conference where they confirmed that they had arrested a 26-year-old white British man locally on suspicion of murder. What happens next, of course, they will continue investigations, but they have refused to rule out a political motive, although they did say it wasn't terrorism.
Detectives from the Force Major Crime Investigation Team have launched a murder investigation and are conducting extensive inquiries into the circumstances surrounding Miss Widdecombe's death. While we work closely with our partners and have consulted counter-terrorism policing as part of our initial inquiries, the incident is not being treated as terrorism. A cordon remains in place at the property while specialist officers continue forensic examinations.
Police have said if anyone has information to please come forward.